The galaxy was full of life, countless stars, countless worlds, and countless species, but among them there was one name that brought only silence and fear: the Drovans. For centuries, the Drovans had ruled the stars with cruelty. They conquered weak planets, enslaved proud races, and burned entire civilizations. No one could stop them. No one dared. Their fleets were endless, their warriors merciless. When a Drovan fleet entered a star system, the people already knew their fate: surrender or die, and most chose surrender because fighting meant extinction. Across the galaxy, leaders spoke of them in whispers. Their children were told bedtime warnings about the Drovans. They were the shadow that no one could escape. To the Drovans themselves, this fear was their crown. They laughed at weakness. They believed no one could challenge them. To them, the galaxy was nothing more than prey. And then there was Earth, a small blue world circling an ordinary star on the edge of a forgotten arm of the Milky Way. Most galactic records barely noticed it. Some called it primitive, some ignored it completely. But humans lived there, and humans were different. The galaxy thought of them as fragile, soft, too weak to survive in the wider cosmos, but the truth was hidden. Earth was a death world, a world where storms raged, beasts hunted, volcanoes roared, and still humans thrived. Every drop of rain, every scar of the planet, had shaped humanity into something the galaxy did not understand. The Drovans, in their arrogance, finally turned their gaze to this little world. At first they laughed. Humans looked so small, so harmless. Their weapons looked outdated. Their fleets looked like toys. The Drovan High Council declared, "Earth will fall in one cycle. We will take their resources, break their people, and move on." Their fleets gathered, black warships with burning red lights, engines screaming like thunder. But humanity was watching. For years, Earth's leaders had seen shadows moving in the galaxy, strange signals in the dark, hints of warships that did not belong to them. They knew something was coming. And so, in secret, they prepared. While the galaxy believed humans were weak, Earth was building, forging ships in hidden shipyards deep in orbit, training soldiers not with fear, but with fire in their hearts. They remembered their history, wars that had scarred continents, battles that had broken empires, sacrifices that had forged nations, and they knew one truth: humans never bowed, not for long, not to anyone. Still, when the Drovan fleet entered the edge of the solar system, fear touched every human heart. The sheer size of their ships, the cold arrogance of their message, surrender or burn, was enough to make even generals silent. But there was also something else, something far stronger than fear: wrath. The Drovans had not just threatened Earth, they had insulted it. They had treated humanity like cattle, like insects, and humanity did not forgive such insults. In command centers across the planet, leaders looked at each other. They knew the cost, but they also knew the choice. Surrender was death in chains. Resistance was death with honor. And maybe, just maybe, resistance could become victory. Earth's first true war fleet rose into the stars, warships gleaming, weapons ready, engines burning bright. Pilots whispered to themselves. Engineers held their breath. Commanders gave no speeches because no speech was needed. Every human already knew. This was not just war. This was survival. And somewhere, deep inside, there was pride too. Pride that humanity would not go quietly. Pride that they would fight, even against the most feared beings in the galaxy. The Drovans saw this rising fleet and laughed again. These were ants throwing stones at titans, but the Drovans had never faced a death world species before. They had never faced humanity's wrath. As the first Drovan ships crossed into the solar system, alarms rang across Earth. Every screen, every voice, every signal carried the same warning. The war for Earth had begun, and in that moment, humanity made its silent promise to the stars. They would not kneel, they would not break, they would fight until the galaxy itself remembered their name. Because humanity had been underestimated too many times before, and this time, the galaxy's most feared beings would learn the price of their arrogance. The Drovan fleet entered the solar system like a storm of shadows. Their black ships spread across the void, each one larger than a city, each one armed with weapons that had burned 100 worlds. They did not hide. They wanted Earth to see them, to tremble, to surrender without a fight, for the Drovans believed fear was their strongest weapon. On Earth, fear was real. Families watched the skies. Soldiers whispered to their children. Leaders felt the weight of impossible choices. But inside that fear was a fire that the Drovans could not understand, because humanity was not as weak as they seemed. In secret, far from the eyes of the galaxy, Earth had been preparing deep beneath the oceans, hidden in the shadow of the moon, buried under ice in Antarctica. There were shipyards, vast and silent, where humanity had forged steel beasts unlike anything the stars had seen. These were not graceful starships like other races built. They were not built for beauty. They were built for survival, for war, heavy armor, rail cannons that could tear through planets, plasma lances that burned hotter than suns, engines that screamed like storms. The humans had learned from their own violent history. They remembered how empires had risen and fallen, how armies had marched across continents, how warriors had faced impossible odds, and they built their ships the same way, brutal, clever, unyielding. The galaxy thought humanity was primitive, but humanity had been watching, learning, stealing whispers of alien signals, decoding fragments of advanced tech, combining it with their own ruthless creativity, and now in silence they revealed their answer to the Drovans. The first of Earth's warships rose into orbit, massive shadows outlined against the blue glow of the planet, their names painted in bold letters: Wrath, Vengeance, Defiance. Inside those ships, young pilots tightened their grips, engineers checked systems again and again, commanders gave orders with steady voices, but deep down, every human felt the same truth. This was the test of their entire species. The Drovan commanders laughed when they saw the ships. Pathetic toys, they said. These humans dare to resist us. They dare to think they can fight the Drovans. But laughter turned to silence when the first human ship locked weapons. A sudden strike ripped across the void. A rail slug faster than light itself slammed into a Drovan cruiser, tearing through its shields like paper. The mighty warship split in two, its fire fading into cold silence. The galaxy had waited centuries for such a moment. A Drovan ship destroyed by prey, on their thrones of arrogance. The Drovan Council felt the first sting of doubt. The humans did not celebrate. They did not cheer. They simply kept moving, ship after ship rising into formation, their engines blazing, their weapons armed, their message clear: Earth would not kneel. In underground bunkers, human leaders spoke softly. This is only the beginning. They will strike back harder. But their eyes held steel, because surrender was no longer an option. The Drovans responded with fury, fleets realigned, weapons charged. Their commanders bellowed orders: erase them, burn their world to ash. But the humans were not fighting with numbers. They were fighting with something the Drovans had never faced before: cunning, patience, and wrath. They used the asteroid belt as a shield, hidden. Cannons as ambush points, drones as decoys. They struck from shadows, vanished into silence, then struck again. The Drovan commanders began to realize the truth. These humans were not weak. They were predators disguised as prey. And in every Drovan heart, for the first time in their long reign of terror, there was something new. Fear. The battle had only begun. But the Drovans had already learned one thing: humanity's wrath was real, and it was only growing stronger. The Drovans had expected an easy conquest. They had expected Earth to fall within hours, but now their first cruiser floated in ruins, broken by a single human strike. For the first time in centuries, Drovan commanders felt rage mixed with confusion. How could prey resist? How could a primitive world strike them down? The order was given: unleash the full fleet, burn Earth to silence, erase these insects before the galaxy even noticed. But the galaxy was already watching. Across hidden networks and whispered channels, news spread like wildfire. The humans fought back. The humans destroyed a Drovan ship. Voices trembled, some with disbelief, some with hope. On neutral worlds, the oppressed races dared to lift their heads. If the Drovans could bleed, then maybe the galaxy could dream again. Back in the solar system, the first war between humans and Drovans began. Drovan battleships pushed forward, each one a floating fortress, weapons bright as stars, their fleets stretched wide, confident they could crush humanity with sheer numbers. But humanity fought differently. Where the Drovans relied on power, humans relied on cunning. They struck from asteroid shadows, used the gravity of planets to sling their weapons faster. They turned weakness into weapons, chaos into traps, Every Drovan advance was met with something unexpected: mines hidden in debris fields, drones carrying decoys, warships split. Eating apart to become smaller fighters, humans twisted every trick they had ever learned in war on Earth and turned it into space warfare. The Drovans began to lose rhythm. They began to doubt their own dominance. A human fleet led by the warship Wrath cut through their formation, rail cannons tearing open Drovan hulls, plasma lances slicing shields like fire through paper. Inside the Drovan command ship, silence grew heavier. The Supreme Commander snarled, but his eyes betrayed unease. Because humans were not just surviving, they were winning small victories. Victories no one thought possible. Still, the price was high. Human ships burned, pilots screamed into silence, cities on Earth shook from orbital bombardments. But with every loss, humanity grew fiercer, not weaker. In command centers, human leaders whispered to one another, "We cannot match their numbers, we cannot match their technology, but we can match their will, and we will break them with it." As battles raged, something even more dangerous began. Humanity learned. Every Drovan strike was studied, every pattern broken down, every weakness found. Humans adapted faster than the Drovans had ever seen. Within hours, strategies shifted, counters emerged, ambushes improved. The Drovans realized the terrible truth: they were not fighting prey. They were fighting predators from a death world, predators that learned with every wound. And when the humans destroyed a second warship, this time a massive battleship thought to be invincible, the galaxy shuddered. The whispers grew into roars. The humans fight back. The humans bring wrath. The Drovans doubled their forces, rage burning hotter than stars. But the seed of fear had already been planted, because deep in their bones, the most feared beings of the galaxy had begun to feel something new. For the first time in their history, the Drovans felt the weight of doom, and at the center of it all, humanity rose higher, their wrath brighter, their courage unbroken. The first contact war had begun, and it would not end the way the Drovans expected. The galaxy had never seen such a war, one small world against the most feared empire, and yet humanity stood unbroken. The Drovans should have crushed Earth quickly, but every battle dragged longer. Every clash brought more Drovan losses. Humanity fought with a fury no alien mind could understand. Across the stars, whispers grew louder. The humans resist. The humans fight back. In cantinas, in hidden colonies, in secret council halls, oppressed races repeated the words with trembling voices. Some dared to believe, some dared to hope. On Earth, humanity revealed more of its secret arsenal. From the shadow of the moon rose warships armed with experimental cannons, weapons that bent magnetic storms into lances of fire. From the deep oceans rose submarines that transformed into space cruisers, rising like leviathans into the sky. From underground bunkers, swarms of drones launched, small but fast, armed with explosives that could tear holes through Drovan armor. The galaxy thought humans were primitive, but humans were inventors, improvisers, death world survivors who could turn scrap into a weapon, silence into a trap. The Drovans were enraged. They unleashed weapons that had destroyed empires, super lasers that split moons, swarms of war drones that could devour fleets, planetary bombardments that could scorch continents. And yet humanity endured, cities burned, oceans boiled. But the will of humanity did not bend. For every city that fell, 100 new soldiers rose. For every ship destroyed, 2 more were built in hidden yards. For every Drovan cruelty, humanity answered with wrath. The humans carried their history with them. They remembered standing against tyrants. They remembered fighting hopeless wars. They remembered rising from ashes again and again, and now they carried that history into the stars. The Drovans began to learn the meaning of death whirl. They discovered humans could fight for days without rest. They discovered humans could endure wounds that would kill other species. They discovered humans adapted faster than their machines could calculate. But worse than all of this, the Drovans discovered that humans fought not for conquest, not for empire, but for survival, for freedom, for family, and that made them unstoppable. The human fleet struck back beyond the solar system. They chased the Drovans into the dark, ambushing their convoys, cutting their supply lines, raiding their colonies. The hunters of the galaxy had become the hunted. The Drovan Supreme Commander raged in fury, his voice echoing across the War Council. These humans must be erased. They must be crushed before their example spreads, before the galaxy begins to rise. But in his heart, he felt something dangerous. He felt fear. Because the humans were not stopping, they were not slowing, they were not breaking. Every Drovan defeat was a wound to their empire, and every wound made the galaxy watch more closely. The wrath of the Deathworlders had been unleashed, and it would not end until one side was broken. And in the dark silence of space, more and more voices began to whisper the same chilling words. If the humans can defeat the Drovans, then who can stand against them? The galaxy trembled as the war grew. The Drovans, once untouchable, now bled in the stars. And humanity, once ignored, now roared with fury. On distant worlds, races long enslaved whispered the new truth. The humans fight back. The humans strike fear into the Drovans. For the first time in centuries, hope returned to those who had forgotten its taste. In the shadows, secret messages began to move. Small fleets from oppressed worlds sent supplies in silence. Smugglers carried weapons and fuel to human hands. Scientists risked their lives to leak stolen blue. Prince, little by little, the galaxy leaned toward humanity. But the Drovans were not blind. Their pride turned to rage. Their fear turned to madness. And they swore an oath. No human shall live. Earth will burn until nothing remains. The Supreme Commander gathered the largest Drovan armada in history, thousands of ships, enough firepower to erase a dozen planets. He declared to his people, "We will crush the Deathworlders. We will make the galaxy fear us again." On Earth, the alarms reached higher than ever. Commanders studied the incoming wave, maps lit with red lines, and for a moment, even the strongest leaders felt the weight of despair. But humanity had something the Drovans could not understand. They had wrath, yes, but they also had unity. Nations that once fought each other now stood together. Rival leaders now shared one table. Enemies of yesterday became brothers and sisters of war because they knew, if Earth fell, everything fell. Shipyards burned with fire and steel. New warships rose faster than ever, their names carved with fury. Justice, Iron Will, Last Stand. Children carried supplies. Elders forged weapons. Soldiers trained with silence in their eyes. Everyone, from the smallest to the greatest, became part of the war. And hidden deeper than the galaxy could imagine, humans prepared their most dangerous weapon yet, a ship not of steel alone, but of human rage and genius combined, a weapon that could change the war. Rumors spread even among Drovan spies, whispers of a ghost fleet, invisible to sensors, armed with weapons unknown, moving like shadows across the void. The Drovans dismissed it as fear, but their commanders felt unease, because already small victories had shown the galaxy something impossible. Humanity was not just surviving, humanity was winning. And as the Drovan armada moved closer, filling the skies with terror, humanity did not kneel. Humanity lit the fire higher. The oppressed, said races of the galaxy began to watch more closely. They whispered to their children, "If the Drovans can fall, maybe freedom will rise again." The Drovan war drums thundered, their fleets darkened the stars, but humanity, standing on the edge of extinction, only tightened their fists, for they were Deathworlders, and when Deathworlders are cornered, they do not break, they burn brighter. And now the galaxy knew humanity's wrath was not fading, it was only growing, turning fear into fire. The Drovan armada entered human space like a black storm. Thousands of warships spread across the void, their weapons blazing like suns, their commanders certain that this battle would end humanity forever. They expected fear, they expected surrender, but what they saw instead froze their hearts. The humans did not run, the humans did not beg, the humans stood waiting with fire in their eyes and steel in their hands. The human fleet was smaller, far smaller, but each ship carried the will of an entire world. Every cannon forged with rage, every engine burning with defiance. The battle began with thunder. The Drovans unleashed their power. Beams of light cut across space. Missiles swarmed like locusts. Explosions swallowed the black void. Human ships burned. Entire formations shattered. Names that had carried pride, wrath, justice, defiance, were torn apart in fire. But even in destruction, the humans struck back. From the ruins of their ships came drones that rammed Drovan hulls. From shattered cruisers came last volleys of plasma fire. Even in death, the humans refused to go silent. The Drovans were stunned. They had never faced prey that turned every defeat into a weapon, every sacrifice into a blade. And then the Ghost Fleet arrived. From the dark side of distant moons, from hidden stations in asteroid belts, from shadows that even Drovan sensors could not pierce, they cause me. Invisible ships cloaked in silence, armed with weapons the galaxy had never seen, rail cannons that bent gravity, missiles that split into storms of fire, lances of plasma that cut through Drovan shields like water. The galaxy, watching from afar, gasped. The humans had been holding back. The Drovans roared with fury, but fury could not hide their fear. Humanity fought like no species ever had. They fought with death world instincts. They adapted every second, turning Drovan power into Drovan weakness, turning the impossible into survival. Yet the cost was terrible. Earth's skies burned as Drovan strikes reached the planet. Cities fell, oceans boiled, millions cried out, but still humanity did not kneel. On the flagship Vengeance, the human commander gave the order no one thought would be spoken. Drive into their heart, break their command, end this war in fire. The ship turned, engines blazing brighter than stars, shields breaking under Drovan fire, but still pushing forward. The Drovan Supreme Commander watched in disbelief as the human flagship cut through his armada like a spear. And then he realized too late, this was not just a ship. This was humanity's wrath-given form. The Vengeance charged directly at the Drovan command ship, weapons firing until their barrels melted, drones swarming like hornets, rail slugs tearing the air. The Supreme Commander shouted orders, but his voice shook, because deep in his heart, he finally understood. The humans could be killed, but they could never be broken. The void itself shook as the two flagships collided in fire, a storm brighter than suns, a roar that echoed across the stars. And in that fire, the galaxy saw the truth. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was wrath itself. The explosion lit the void like a newborn sun. The Drovan command ship shattered. Fragments of burning steel scattered across the stars, their supreme commander silenced in fire. For a moment, the galaxy held its breath. The Drovans, the most feared beings of the stars, had been broken, their great armada torn apart, their pride crushed, their names stained with defeat. Human ships floated in ruins, thousands of voices lost. But the survivors still stood, scarred and bleeding, yet unbroken. From the ashes of Vengeance, signals spread across the stars. The humans were alive. The humans had won. On Drovan worlds, silence replaced arrogance. Their soldiers bowed their heads. Their leaders stared into the void with hollow eyes. They had never imagined defeat, but now defeat had a face, humanity's face. Across distant colonies, across hidden planets, enslaved races cheered, chains rattled and broke. For they saw hope where there had once been only despair. The galaxy had lived in fear of the Drovans, but now a new fear rose. Whispers carried from world to world. The humans are death worlders. The humans bring wrath. In council chambers far away, alien leaders debated in silence. Some wanted alliance. Some wanted distance. All of them knew the same truth. Humanity had changed the balance of power forever. For the first time, prey had hunted the predator. For the first time, the galaxy knew that strength did not always wear the crown of age or empire. Sometimes it came from the fire of survival. On Earth, survivors wept for the lost, but their tears were mixed with pride. They had stood against the galaxy's greatest terror and they had endured. Children looked up at the stars with new eyes, not with fear, but with fire. For they knew their place was no longer in the shadows. The Drovans had fallen, but in their fall they had forged something even greater. A legend, the legend of humanity, the death world species, the wrath of the stars. And as the galaxy turned its gaze toward Earth, every ruler, every soldier, every being whispered the same question in silence. If the humans could defeat the Drovans, then who will they face next? The answer was not yet written, but one truth echoed louder than all others. The galaxy once feared the Drovans, but now it feared humanity.